If you don't solve the right problems, your project will die. An early and painful death, too. You see how little they wrote on that tombstone? That's how much people remember about that project you abandoned a few months ago. You know, in my game, Asterisk, which you can play for free by clicking the link in the description now. This realization that you need to solve the right problems was critical. It was absolutely critical. I mean, the game's working right now. It's being played by people, and I have such a clear direction for where the game needs to move in right now. And it's because I didn't get bogged down in the details of problem solving the wrong problems. Like there's not even text rendering in this game yet. You have a limited amount of time in your day and in your life. It's actually a very, very small amount of time that you have to live for. In fact, you're going to be dead in 10 seconds. It was nice knowing you for this video's duration. But because of this fact that you just don't have that much time, right? Like at most maybe, 30 or 40 hours of deep work like a week. 60 if you're like pushing it. That's like really not that much time. Let's just talk about like budgets. It's like, all right, how many weeks are you going to be working on this thing for? Okay, 8 weeks. Let's do something more realistic. Let's say you have like a job and you're working on it part-time. So let's just say it's actually more like 52 weeks. But you're only putting in 10 hours a week of like focused effort, which is still a lot with a full-time job. That's 520 hours. Now that's kind of a number that's like not easy to grasp in the form of hours. So let's just talk about like how long it takes to implement different things in a game. I'm going to be doing a game written from scratch in this example. Let's say text rendering is like 10 hours. Now, I've already made a cardinal sin here. You can't like split your game into subsystems and then measure how long it takes, or like throw in a guess out there for how long it takes for each like subsystem to be created. Because what you're ignoring is how this subsystem interlocks with your other gameplay code and makes it harder to refactor and work on your project. Like the text rendering might fuck up the UI rendering in some like cross-cutting, like multiple considerations format, where the data, like it could be that how you're loading the fonts just makes it really hard to do really nice immediate mode UI. Or like all these things, right? Like maybe it takes up too much budget and like, you know what I mean? Like, the more shit you add to a program, the harder it is to add more stuff to the program because you have to take into account all the stuff you've added as you add new features and new bug fixes and everything. And so this 10 hours is probably more like 30 hours all said and done. Let's say you got like a spaceship rendering in 50 hours. Let's say this is like a complicated space game, a UI 100 hours. Already we're at 200 hours used to make this game. And we haven't even started on the gameplay. You've now just halved the amount of time that you have to work on the gameplay, which is the only thing that really matters for a game. Like if a game is really good, I believe that it doesn't matter how shitty all the like capsulation around that is, right? How shitty the graphics are, how shitty the UI is, how shitty the text rendering is. If the game is actually good, people will play it anyways. Like people don't complain about like chess being bad. They would play that game with like wooden tools in like in the middle of a forest because it's just really good like innately. So if you've already used like about half of your budget for time on just extraneous stuff, that's like going from working 10 hours a week into 5 hours a week. So you see how quickly like working on stuff, solving problems that aren't directly related to what you're trying to do can be absolutely like, it can be devastating because now you just have half the amount of time, just completely one half. That means it's going to take like twice the amount of time to implement the stuff you wanted to implement, and probably even more because of the cross-cutting concerns things I talked about before. All said and done, I'm just telling you to prioritize. Not just prioritize, but that prioritization is actually the thing that like decides whether or not you're going to be successful in what you're doing. Like by far. I've seen so many projects and I've worked on so many things where you're just a rat hole on a problem that doesn't actually matter. It's so easy to fall into. It's like a trap you have to constantly be aware of. It's like a sin. You just have to pray at night. Like, I hope I don't misprioritize on my project. And that's like all you can do. You're just at the mercy of God or whoever decides what your priorities are. I guess that's you. So I guess you're at the mercy of you. But the analogy's falling apart. I want to show you like how bad certain subsections of the Asterisk code is so you can understand how strongly I think you should be prioritizing, like how strongly you should be calling these things that don't matter. So this is the code I was using to draw the stars that you see as you move around on the map. Now don't worry, you don't need no programming. I'm just going to explain to you what this code is doing. So let's say this is the death ring, and this is like where the camera is right now, like what it's seeing. And that's like the vision ring around your player. What this code is doing is for like 100, right, in every direction, starting at the center of the map, it's drawing stars, like everywhere, wherever the screen, even like places where the player really isn't at all, it's drawing stars. All of this stuff is wasted. All of this time spent drawing outside of where the player can see is just the computer doing nothing, spinning up and doing cycles. You know, like most games that are like 3D and big budget, they only render what's in front of the player. This is called frustum culling from learnopengl.com. And like you can see that the camera in this yellow like shaded area is what the game is actually drawing, and the rest of it just isn't there. Like only what's in front of the player is like what's being rendered. This is a massive save on a render time. This is like I'm not doing frustum culling in like a two-dimensional game. I'm not like I'm not rendering the stars that are outside of the viewport. I mean I do. So technically I don't render them. If they're outside of the viewport, I don't like render them, but I'm still doing the computation of iterating over all of these spots and deciding whether or not to render a star there. You know, massive waste. I just refactored it today to only decide what to draw inside of this circle like 2 months after I wrote that code. Because if I had spent that time solving this problem then, I would have been behind by like a day or two, right? And that problem would compound with every single little thing I'd have to solve in the game. I'd be first a day or two behind, and then like weeks behind, and then months behind, and then the game wouldn't even be playable right now. It'd still be working on like text rendering or something. There's not even text rendering in this game yet. I don't think it's necessary for like a long time. Like before you work on anything extraneous to the project, make sure it's doing something interesting that's like worth preserving and working on. Like if you're working on something new and interesting, your top priority should be trying to figure out what exactly is beautiful and captures the attention of players, and how can I get that done as quickly as possible to confirm my suspicions about how reality works. And it's really good for you guys today. Make sure to like and subscribe. There's a big playlist of around 45 videos just like this one you can watch on my channel called The Game. You can binge watch them. You're a little binge watcher.